Imagine the stroke of midnight on a crisp autumn night in Brussels, October 15, 2030. The European Union's grand edifice, forged from the ashes of two world wars, a single market binding 450 million souls, 18 trillion euros in collective GDP, shatters like a dropped amphora in the halls of antiquity. No warning shots, no referendums, no acrimonious summits. A cyber virus, traced later to a rogue faction within Europe's own security apparatus, unleashes a digital guillotine. It wipes every EU treaty from servers worldwide, falsifies dissolution decrees in every member state's legal databases, and broadcasts an irrefutable manifesto. The Union is dead. Borders rise at dawn. This is no mere glitch. Real-world precedents whisper its plausibility. Recall the 2016 WannaCry ransomware that crippled Britain's National Health Service, or the 2021 Colonial Pipeline hack that starved America's East Coast of fuel. Scale that to Europe's hyper-integrated systems. The Target 2 payment network processing 2 trillion euros daily, the Euroclear clearinghouse settling 150 trillion euros in securities annually, and you see the fracture lines. By 1:00 a.m., trading algorithms detect the anomaly. Stock futures on the DAX, CAC 40, and FTSE plummet 15% in minutes, triggering circuit breakers modeled after the 1987 Black Monday flash crash, when global markets shed $1.7 trillion in hours. Dawn breaks over a continent unmoored. National leaders convene emergency cabinets. Germany's chancellor, facing a 4.2 trillion euros economy now isolated, invokes Article 115 of the Basic Law for a state of legislative emergency. France seals its borders, echoing the 2020 COVID lockdowns that froze intra-EU travel. Italy's populist government declares the euro a relic of Berlin's dominance, citing the 2011 sovereign debt crisis when yields on Italian bonds spiked to 7.5%, bankrupting smaller nations. The dominoes teeter. Chapter 2. The first rippled 24 hours of chaos. By 6:00 a.m., the financial arteries clot. The European Central Bank's 8 trillion euros balance sheet, bloated from post-2008 quantitative easing, evaporates as the Eurozone implodes. National currencies re-emerge overnight via executive fiat. The Deutschmark reboots at parity with the euro's last close, backed by Germany's 3 trillion euros in gold and Forex reserves, the world's second largest after China's. France resurrects the franc, devalued 20% instantly to reflect its 2.9 trillion euros GDP shadowed by 110% debt-to-GDP ratio, mirroring the 1993 ERM crisis, when the franc lost 10% against the mark in a single day. Panic cascades logically. ATMs in Madrid and Athens dispense nothing. Spain's 1.5 trillion euros banking sector, 80% exposed to cross-border loans per ECB data, faces a liquidity freeze akin to Lehman Brothers' 2008 collapse, when interbank lending halted globally. Supermarkets in Warsaw empty as Poles hoard, their zloty surging 30% as capital flees south. A flight echoing the 1992 EMS crisis, where speculative attacks drained £27 billion from UK reserves. Trade grinds to halt. The 2.5 trillion euros single market, responsible for 60% of members' exports, fractures. Dutch ports, handling 400 million tons of EU freight yearly, idle as customs checks resume, delays multiplying costs by 12%, per WTO border friction studies. Airlines ground flights. Ryanair, 70% intra-EU reliant, burns 200 million euros daily, paralleling the 2020 pandemic grounding that erased 30 billion euros in aviation revenue. By nightfall, riots flicker in Lisbon and Budapest. Inflation ticks up 2% in hours from hoarding, a microcosm of Venezuela's 2016 hyperinflation prelude, where shortages tripled prices pre-Bolivar collapse. The human toll mounts. 27 million Erasmus students abroad stranded, supply chains for 40% of Europe's pharmaceuticals severed. Europe, the architect of post-WWII prosperity, stares into the abyss. Chapter 3. The System Shock, 1 Month of Reckoning. Week 1. Markets convulse. The rebooted mark appreciates 25% against a basket of new national currencies, drawing capital like the Swiss franc during the 2011 Eurozone debt storm, when it gained 15% in months. Germany's DAX rebounds to pre-dissolution levels by week 2, buoyed by its 400 billion euros current account surplus, the world's largest, but peripherals hemorrhage. Greece's new drachma plunges 60%, inflating its 200 billion euros debt to Weimar-scale burdens. Hyperinflation whispers as printing presses mimic 1923 Germany, where the Reichsmark hit 4.2 trillion per dollar. Logical escalation follows. Intra-EU trade volume, 3.5 trillion euros annually per Eurostat, contracts 40% as tariffs snap into place, reverting to 2019 global averages of 5–10% per World Bank data. Italy's Fiat Chrysler output halves. Its 2 trillion euros economy, 30% export dependent on Germany, enters recession with GDP shrinking 8% monthly, akin to the 2009 Great Recession's 15% peak drop. Energy chokes the machine. Russia's Gazprom, supplying 40% of EU gas via pipelines like Nord Stream, pre-2022 sabotage precedent, demands payment in rubles or drachmas, neither welcome. Germany, consuming 90 billion cubic meters yearly, rations like 1973 OPEC embargo, when prices quadrupled and GDP fell 2.5%. Blackouts ripple from Lisbon to Riga. Social fissures widen. Unemployment surges from 6.5% EU average to 12%, per IMF models of trade shock, mirroring Spain's 26% peak in 2013. Migrant flows reverse. 2 million EU workers repatriate, swelling jobless rolls in Poland, GDP per capita 18,000 euros versus Germany's 50,000 euros. Riots claim 500 lives, echoing France's 2005 Banlieue unrest scaled continent-wide. By month's end, GDP aggregates fall 15%, 2.7 trillion euros erased, exceeding the 2008 crisis's 1.5 trillion euros hit. New alliances glimmer. The Latin bloc, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, pegs currencies loosely, their combined 6 trillion euros GDP seeking Franco-German rivalry balance. Northern tigers, Germany, Netherlands, Nordics, form a Hanse Union, echoing the 16th century Hanseatic League's trade dominance. Chapter 4. The New Order, 1 Year of Forging. Adaptation carves ruthlessly. Germany's economy swells 5% on mark strength, exports pivoting to Asia, its 1.4 trillion euros merchandise surplus intact, much like Japan's post-Plaza Accord export boom in the 1980s. Unemployment dips to 4%, factories rehiring as labor costs fall 20% in peripheral currencies. The periphery fractures further. Greece defaults on 300 billion euros, repudiating debts like Argentina's 2001 Corralito, which slashed GDP 11% but cleared books for rebound. Italy fragments regionally. The industrialized North, Lombardy, Veneto, eyes Austrian alliance, their 800 billion euros output rivaling Sweden's. Southern Mezzogiorno, mired in 25% unemployment, spirals into autarky, bartering olives for fuel, a grim echo of post-WWI Italy's regional divides. Monetary wars rage. France's franc, backed by 2 trillion euros reserves, stabilizes via capital controls mirroring Iceland's 2008 playbook, which preserved krona value post-90% devaluation. Inflation hits 15%, eroding pensions but fueling reindustrialization. Airbus relocates 60% production to Toulouse, shedding German ties. Trade realigns. EU dissolution boosts global shifts. China's Belt and Road absorbs 20% of ex-EU exports, per WTO forecasts, while US LNG fills energy gaps at 30% premium over Russian gas. The Hanse Union's frictionless bloc grows GDP 3% faster than EU average, their €6 trillion market emulating NAFTA's 1994 integration gains. Geopolitics hardens. NATO strains as France exits integrated command, citing dissolution betrayal, echoing de Gaulle's 1966 withdrawal. Russia probes Baltic borders, emboldened by Europe's disunity, much like 2014 Crimea after financial crisis weakened Kyiv. Migration walls rise. Frontex dismantled. National forces deport 1 million, slashing remittances that fueled 2% of peripheral GDPs. 1 year on, aggregate GDP recovers to -8% from peak shock, but inequality yawns. Germany's per capita income hits €60,000. Bulgaria's drachma equivalent sinks to €5,000. A new map emerges: 5 major blocks: Hanse, Latin, Visegrad, Poland et al., Balkans, Iberia, each with GDP shares mirroring pre-EU Hanseatic power balances. Chapter 5: The Legacy 10 Years of Iron Realms. Decade's dawn hardens the fracture. Hanse evolves into a mark zone, GDP ballooning to €8 trillion, unemployment at 3.5%, innovation surging 20% above pre-dissolution patents, propelled by fiscal discipline like post-1990 reunified Germany's 2% growth miracle. Rotterdam supersedes as Europe's trade nexus, handling 500 million tons freight, tariffs minimal within bloc. Latin bloc stabilizes uneasily. France leads a €5 trillion entity, but Italy's north secedes as Padania Republic in 2035, its €1 trillion economy allying with Hanse, a velvet divorce akin to Czechoslovakia's 1993 split, avoiding Yugoslavia's bloodshed. Spain bifurcates. Catalonia independent, GDP €300 billion thriving on tech exports like Ireland's post-1922 pivot. Periphery descends into grimdark fiefdoms. Greece, after 50% GDP collapse, rebounds modestly via tourism and shipping, its €20 billion merchant fleet dominating Black Sea trade, echoing Phoenician resilience. But Bulgaria and Romania merge into Danubia, a €400 billion authoritarian state, inflation tamed at 5% via commodity pegs, much like Putin's Russia post-1998 ruble crash. Global ripples amplify. World GDP grows 2% slower sans EU cohesion, per IMF simulations. US dominates transatlantic trade, its €25 trillion economy absorbing ex-EU FDI. China eclipses, EU dissolution ceding 15% market share in EVs and renewables. Belt and Road now spans from Gdansk to Gibraltar. Inequality ossifies. Top 10% in Hanse capture 40% income, Gini at 0.35. Latin South at 0.5, rivaling Brazil's. Wars flicker. 2037 Visegrad-Russia border clash kills 10,000, echoing 1990s Yugoslav precedents. Climate pacts fracture. Hanse achieves net zero by 2045 alone, while Latin emissions rise 20%, flooding Venice anew. By year 10, Europe's €16 trillion GDP lags a unified world's €20 trillion projection. Borders scar the land. Armies swell to 2 million, double pre-dissolution. Prosperity clusters in northern citadels. Southern realms barter in shadows. Hyperinflation ghosts banished by iron fists. Chapter 6: The Long Shadow. Year 20, Fractured Empires. 2 decades etch permanence. Hanse, now New Hanseatic League, spans Germany, Netherlands, Nordics, Austria, Poland, €12 trillion juggernaut, GDP per capita €70,000, powered by AI and green hydrogen. Mark evolves into reserve currency, 10% of global reserves, mirroring dollar post-Bretton Woods ascent. Warsaw thrives as Eastern bastion, its GDP tripling via shale gas mirroring US fracking boom. Latin bloc splinters fully. France stands sovereign. 4 trillion euros economy militarized. Nuclear arsenal deterring incursions. De Gaulle's forced to frap writ large. Iberia unites peninsular south. 1.5 trillion euros reliant on African phosphates. Autarkic like Franco's Spain but with 8% growth from solar exports. Balkans forge Illyrian Federation. Resource-rich 800 billion euros bloc. But corruption festers, 20% GDP shadow economy, echoing Albania's 1997 pyramid collapse. Greece-Padania axis dominates Mediterranean trade, shipping empires rivaling Singapore's. Conflict scar, 2042, Alpine War. Switzerland joins Hansi, clashing with Latin remnants over hydropower, 50,000 dead, costs 500 billion euros like Ukraine 2022 scaled down. Russia annexes Baltic's remnants, unopposed by divided NATO. Europe's innovation lead erodes. US-China duopoly claims 70% patents. Migration stabilizes at walls. Populations aging to 25% over 65. Pensions strained like Japan's 0.5% growth trap. Chapter 7, Year 30, Echoes of Empire. Thrice a decade, the new order petrifies. Hanseatic GDP hits 15 trillion euros, 40 euros% of Europe's total. Berlin as unchallenged hegemon, echoing Prussian dominance pre-1914. Quantum computing hubs in Munich pioneer fusion, energy independence absolute. Southern realms adapt savagely. France's Nouvelle République enforces dirigism, GDP 5 trillion euros via state capitalism like China's model, inequality quelled at Gini 0.4. Illyria industrializes on rare earths, growth 4% yearly, but oligarchs rule like post-Soviet kleptocracies. Trade wars with Asia flare. 2055 tariffs on Chinese steel crash global growth 1%, per WTO echoes of 1930 Smoot-Hawley. Europe's military spending doubles to 3% GDP, alliances fluid, Hansi pacts with India, Latin with Brazil. Demographics bite. Fertility at 1.3, robot armies fill gaps, unemployment 2% but youth radicalized in periphery ghettos. Chapter 8, Year 40, Twilight Realms. 4 decades in, entropy reigns. Hansi plateaus at 18 trillion euros, innovation stifled by insularity. R&D spend 4% GDP yields diminishing returns like Japan's lost decades. Mark loses 5% reserve share to digital yuan. Periphery rises phoenix-like. Danubia, post-reforms, GDP 2 trillion euros, Budapest as fintech hub rivaling Estonia pre-dissolution. Greece leads hydroponic agrotech, exporting food to famine-struck Africa. Climate reckoning. Sea rise claims 10% Dutch polders despite dikes, costs 1 trillion euros, Hansi taxes fund arcologies. Wars recede but cyber skirmishes proliferate, crippling grids like Stuxnet on steroids. Global standing. Europe 20% world GDP down from 25%, ceded to Asia's rise. Chapter 9, Year 50, Eternal Divides. Half-century seals fate. No grand reunification. 12 sovereign blocs endure. Total GDP 22 trillion euros, 20 euros% above pre-dissolution, but per capita stagnant at 45,000 euros versus US 90,000 euros. Hansi endures as elder empire, Latin states as proud republics, peripheries as resilient fiefdoms. Lessons etched in stone, integration's fragility, nationalism's forge. Like Rome's fall birthing Byzantium and Francia, EU's midnight death yields iron realms, a prosperous north, turbulent south, forever divided. The dominoes, once fallen, build new towers in blood and ledger.